Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Stories about Karen will never go out of style, so let's start with a warm-up story. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. More shopping, one-way aisle shenanigans. I was in the shop the other day, and for whatever reason, folks can't understand the concept of one-way aisles and following arrows. Personally, I think it makes the shopping much more efficient overall, not having to squeeze by folks, but that's another thing. Heading up to the baking aisle in my fruitless attempt to find yeast, I'm standing there looking at the once again empty shelf when I notice Karen. Like the stereotypical Karen, she could be placed in the dictionary as the go-to example of Karen, coming down the aisle from the wrong direction. Well, I was in a bad mood, had a rough day at work, so I casually took one step towards the middle of the aisle, conveniently right next to one of the one-way only arrows on the floor, and proceed to take my sweet time looking at the adjacent flowers. Well, of course, Karen gets to me, and I hear a big huff. Apparently using big girl words was too much. I ignore and continue my examination of the flowers. Another louder huff, the sound only a true Karen could make. So I turn to face her and stare at her for 5 seconds of silence, look down at the one-way sticker I was standing next to for another good 5 seconds, followed up with 5 more seconds of Karen stare, and went back to the flowers. This was met with some choice words that, being a gentleman, I shan't repeat, but defeated Karen turned her cart around and sulked away. Sadly, that filled up my OP can be a jerk to strangers quota for the month, if not year, but it was worth it. And our next story. Managers harassed me into quitting, got one of them fired soon after. I used to work for a popular blue and yellow electronics retailer. My first store was great, my general manager was great, and my coworkers were amazing. Unfortunately, I had to move for family reasons and transferred to another store. I quickly found out the GM was one of the sorriest people on the planet. He was a very lazy person and generally spent all day in the store's sales development room with the door locked. Only a few other managers had a key, and you could only get in if you went through one of them first. It almost felt like trying to get FaceTime with a wannabe mob boss. He was also a big fan of the book 48 Laws of Power, quoted it frequently, and made his other managers read the book. I read it myself out of curiosity and was mostly disgusted because I could really see some of the laws shining through in the way he ran his store. Example number 7. Let others do the work for you, but always take credit. If you go and read the 48 laws, there are quite a few cheat sheets online that list them, and you can get a really good idea of the type of person this man was. He used a lot of power based on mind tricks and was very manipulative. Anyway, fast forward about a month and corporate staff were in the store. They were walking the floor and talking to employees, and they talked to me. They asked how long I'd worked there, and I said I was a transfer. They said, "Oh, well, which store did you like better, this one or your old one?" I answered the question honestly and told them I liked my old store. This seemed to interest them, and they asked why, and without directly talking crap about anyone, I honestly told them that I felt that leadership in this store was lacking compared to my old one and gave a few examples. I did not do this to be hateful. They seemed genuinely interested in seeing what's going on and were looking for suggestions on how to improve the company at this level, and I was giving my honest feedback. The next day I came to work. I was told by the AP, asset protection guy at the door, that the GM wanted to see me when I got there. So I went into the office with him, and he and my direct manager really laid into me for what I said. I'm typically not someone who lets confrontation bother me, but I was almost in tears when I left this office. He was literally in my face demanding to know why I felt like I should tell corporate that he ran his store like crap. That's not what I said. I told him I was just being honest. He told me I had disrespected him. We went in circles for a bit, and he told me to go home for the rest of today and think about whether I wanted to continue working in a store I thought was run so poorly. I went home, and I almost quit that day because I felt like the whole conversation was inappropriate. I was shaking with anger on the way home. All I'd done was give my honest answer when asked by a corporate staff member. I almost called the store to say I wouldn't be coming back, but I needed the job and decided to at least wait until I found something else. Within a week, I found myself getting 2 written warnings, and I knew they were targeting me because of what happened. Once was for being late by 8 minutes, which is funny because our store typically has a 10-minute grace period, and another was for a customer complaint that baffles me. Apparently, a customer complained to my GM that I was rude and it caused them not to purchase that day, and when I asked exactly what they said, I was only given a very vague statement about my attitude being bad. They couldn't tell me exactly what words the customer took offense to, and I believe they made this up as an excuse to write me up. At this point, I became fed up and did quit my job. I blew up on one of the supervisors, to my regret, but a lot had been building at that point, and I said I wouldn't be back. F it. I would just find another job as soon as I could. At home, I was still mad and began plotting my revenge. The thing that really burned me up about the attendance write-up was the fact that the manager who wrote me up for it had horrible attendance himself. He and the GM were close friends, and he was frequently late for work or just didn't come in at all. I know a lot of people were frustrated with him because even supervisors and managers would complain about having to cover for him when I worked there. I decided to submit an anonymous complaint to HR. First, I waited for about a month so it wouldn't be obvious it was me. My mindset was, you want to write me up? I'll get you written up. So in my complaint, I simply stated that the manager missed work all the time and nothing ever happened to him because he was friends with the GM, and that I didn't think it was fair that other employees got written up for attendance when he didn't seem to have to follow an attendance policy at all. I soon heard news from one of the friends I'd managed to make in my short time there that the manager I had complained about had been fired pretty soon after I made the complaint. This surprised me, because at the most I thought he would just get written up and my GM would get in trouble for not holding everyone accountable equally. Apparently, there had been a couple of other complaints before mine, and this manager and GM were already being suspected for attendance violations. Managers are salaried, which means they get paid no matter how many hours they work, or don't work. He'd missed so many days that a case had been made for him stealing time. The district manager had supposedly investigated and found no violation. When I did my complaint, I used the hotline so it went directly to corporate and over the district manager's head. They sent someone to investigate, and as a result of what they found, gave that manager a choice to resign now or be suspended pending investigation for time theft. Long story short, he resigned and the GM got written disciplinary action. From what I understand, the DM came under fire as well because shortly after all this happened, she came to the store and went around speaking to the employees directly, asking them if everything was going good and telling them she hoped they understood if there were ever any issues. They could email her directly instead of involving corporate. I hadn't heard of that book, but a quick Google search turned up this gem, The 48 Laws of Power, 1998. It's the first book by American author Robert Greene. The book is a bestseller, selling over 1.2 million copies in the United States, and is popular with prison inmates and celebrities. And our last story. Screw me on pay and ignore my demands? I'll quit and get rehired at a higher wage. I'll try to keep this as short as possible. This happened about 20 years ago when I was in high school. I worked summers in a restaurant as a cook. I'd been there for a few years and worked my way up from dishwasher to head cook. It was a fast food seafood restaurant, not a chain. It was quality food, but the majority was fried seafood. So this summer, I started working as one of 3 head cooks. We basically ran the kitchen during our shifts. Summer was the busy season, tons of tourists, and we'd crank out anywhere from 600 to 700 orders a day. Busy. So after working for a few weeks, they hire a new line cook that I get to train. Guy's a few years older than me, but knows little to nothing about fried foods. I had to show him everything. No big deal. Then he starts talking about how much he's making. We're all hourly wages, and his wage was about $1.25 an hour more than me. I was a little PO'd. Here I'd been with the restaurant for 4 years, and now I was training a guy making quite a bit more than me. That night, my best friend, who also worked there, was pulled into the manager's office. He'd worked about 55 hours the week before, so they were trying to get him to move his overtime hours to the next paycheck, cutting down on how much they would have to pay him. Manager said he would actually lose money because of how many OT hours he had if they were all on the same check. This is BS. We didn't really make enough for the shift to a higher tax bracket. So I slept on those 2 incidents, and the next day I walked in and told the other manager I was quitting after my shift that day. This was July 4th, the busiest one of the summer, and they literally had no one to replace me on the schedule. Manager just kept looking at me during the day, sighing like his dog just got hit. The next day, I worked my other job in the morning, which was delivering lobster to local restaurants. One of my deliveries was to the restaurant I worked at. When I walked in with the delivery, the owner was there to talk. I told him about the pay difference and how my buddy was screwed out of overtime. Owner offered me a $1.75 raise. Nice. Then I asked about all the hours I'd already worked that summer. He offered to check with back pay for the difference. I said I'd think about it, called later that afternoon and accepted. When I came back for my next shift, had a check for $1,100 waiting for me for the back pay. Manager who screwed my buddy was livid as his brother, the owner, chewed his butt out about the whole situation. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.